Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I'm your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. It is September 23rd, 2025. We are live. So good to have you all. Come on in. I hope you guys grab yourself a snack. We're about to get into this for today. If you guys have not already, go ahead and give a like to the stream. This helps me out very much to be able to reach more people, to be able to help encourage, inspire, and activate as well. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and subscribe to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com. It gives you email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or write any articles. So you guys have that there. And if you guys would like to get any type of reactions from me, from any questions you have on video, or if you guys would like me to react to a video that you find very interesting, you guys can always send it to me through QBounty at qbounty.com/Jaybefaunt. So you guys have that there. Thank you very much. Welcome back to everybody. So good to have you here. It was a very great and invigorating weekend. And so I hope you guys are ready for some news today. We're going to be speaking about 3 different topics. But before we get into that, I just want to make sure that we get into saying our hellos to everybody in the chat, and then we'll get started very quickly. And I do apologize for my tardiness, but it is warranted. We have Edward coming in saying, hi, JB. Good to see you, Edward. Edward's all in the chat early. CBC voter says, happy Tuesday at JB. Good to see you. He says, remember general strike? Let's try it. Absolutely. We have Jacqueline coming in saying, hey, JB. Hey, everyone. Hope you're enjoying your tacos. Yes, it is Taco Tuesday. I hope you guys got some. I said it 3 times for emphasis. You know that means it's serious. All right. We have Kat coming in saying, oh, hi, JB. Oh, my God. Did you hear Shorai Don's speech at the UN today? I didn't get to see it. I saw it like in passing, but I didn't get to look at it because I was preparing for the show for today. But I may end up having to do a separate clip for that one. So that's going to be very interesting to talk about. But yeah, I think I read somewhere something. He said some wild BS, but yeah. Somebody needs to just shut him up sometimes. Anyway, just put a muzzle on him. Terry Conley says, greetings, JB and comrades. Jacqueline says, oh, boy. It says, I hear it's the rapture today. But whose today are they talking about? My today will be over in less than 4 hours, and it's no longer the 23rd in China. Look. How many times have they been saying, oh, the rapture is going to happen on this day and that day? You know what? Big seltzer, by the way. The whole thing about the rapture thing. When people are paying attention to when somebody says, oh, the rapture is going to happen on this day and that day or whatever. Those are usually people who are uneducated or undereducated in Christianity and the Bible. Why do I say that? Because specifically in the Christian Greek scriptures, Jesus said that as for the day or the hour, nobody knows except for the Father, not even the Son. Meaning that Jesus doesn't even know when the day is. So if by that very logic, if none of them except for the Father knows, then guess what? They don't know either. Which leads me to believe that the people who are proclaiming this are doing it just as a publicity stunt so they can get more money. Televangelism, people. That's exactly what it is. And then it goes viral, and people are like, oh my God, this reverend said that the rapture is going to happen this day, or that reverend said it's going to happen on that day. And then guess what? You pay attention to them. Even if it's to laugh at them, because they still are getting either the clicks and views, or they're getting the page visits, or they're getting more people hearing about it who may not know much, and then they'll go to their church, and then, you know, the church numbers may go up for a day or two. And guess what? Some of those people may feel compelled to put some money in, in a collection plate. So it's really just a scam. It's a scam. This is why I don't talk about it. Because here's the thing, they didn't read their own book. So, yeah. So today will come and end, and then tomorrow will come and end, and the next day will come and end. And the same people who thought it was going to happen are going to wake up on Earth and realize I got played. All right. Roger says, I am making a list of federal laws I had repealed to snap old laws back in place. We had a National Citizen Ballot Initiative amendment to U.S. Con that would allow us to repeal federal laws. Anyone have suggestions? All right. We have Dr. Whoa says, JB. Good to see you in the chat as well. Roger says, as soon as I get my customer, I'll be listening, no watching and chatting for 90 minutes. So let me say hello to everyone now. Okay. Dr. Wolf says, we survived the rapture, y'all. We're left behind. Oh my gosh. Let me see. Sean says, good afternoon, JB. And then Edward says, evangelists have their own networks, their own education system. They are powerful and want to integrate the church with the government, which is crazy because if you're trying to integrate the church with the government, that means that you're going beyond what God has commanded. Oh, y'all don't want me to get into that one. Because ultimately, he said his kingdom is not of this world. So therefore, why are you trying to make a kingdom of this world? And the kingdom is a type of government. So why are you trying to make a government for God in this world, which he plans to destroy? Why are you wasting God's time? Anywho, let's get into the show today. So what are we talking about? Today we have a few stories just a few. All right. So we're going to be talking about three things. So later in the show today, we're going to be talking about credit scores and the fact that they are dropping like rocks. They are dropping it like it's hot, like a bunch of Gen X women in a 90s style club with Trick Daddy playing on the radio. Let me tell you, it's dropping. All right. Then we're also going to be talking about Donald Trump and him wanting to erase Freedmen history. We're going to show that Donald Trump is not an ally to freedmen. And there's really no amount of finagling that you can do and to even force him to do things for freedmen. But first, we're going to be getting into this story. This is a positive story that we're going to be getting into. And we're going to talk about a general strike that happened, not here, but in Italy. Yes, an Italian general strike. The Italian general strike, we will be getting into right now with general strike for Gaza. Yup, I'm impressed. Remember when everybody and their mama was talking about a general strike 2023, 2022, somewhere around there? We all were talking about a general strike, how much is necessary. And it seems to be still a constant current and undercurrent of conversation, especially with a lot of us working people, because ultimately this system is doing nothing for us. And so the best course of action in order to make change is to give it a stopping the heart of the economic system. And who would fare the worst? Would it be the elites, right? I hate calling them the elites. I'm sorry. The parasites. Yes, we have to be anti-parasite here. But that's one of the issues that is prevalent today. A lot of people are talking about it. But there's one thing to talk about it. There's another thing to do it. Let's get into this because a general strike happened yesterday. And let's take a look at that.
Bloccare il paese per dare un segnale al popolo palestinese, ma per costringere i nostri governi a smettere di balbettare e fare effettivamente quello che serve per portare a casa il risultato. Se non blocchiamo quello che va in Israele, se non blocchiamo i rapporti commerciali, la distribuzione delle armi e tutto quello che può conseguire con Israele, non otterremo mai niente.
So that is basically what is going on right now. There's a lot more developing as we speak in regards to this going on in Italy. And there are some people who are on the ground that are speaking to Italians as to why they are participating in this general strike even more because of what has been going on in Gaza. What happens in Gaza is absolutely atrocious. It is a Holocaust. I don't use the word genocide anymore because it seems to have been weakened by its frequent use. So I don't know too many people who use the word Holocaust, but I call it the Palestinian Holocaust. And so because, excuse me, the reason why is because it fits the definition. And as we see, the streets are with Palestine, even though the governments may not be. And there's a reason for that. So let me share this as well, because I think it is important that we get into the why in speaking to people on the ground. I got to give a shout out to More Perfect Union for this. They say today, tens of thousands of workers across Italy held a massive general strike led by dock workers in solidarity with their colleagues on the Gaza Freedom Flotilla. The strike spread across the country. One dock worker told us, if trying to stop this traffic of death means having to stop every type of traffic to and from Israel, then fine, we will stop everything. So let's get into this.
I'm in Genoa, Italy today, where dock workers have called for a strike in solidarity with the global Samud flotilla and with Gaza.
Noi tutti e tre siamo lavoratori del porto di Genova, lavoriamo in banchina con le navi che da Genova transitano 14-15 mila contenitori verso Israele all'anno, e con il nostro blocco abbiamo detto che se toccano la flottiglia e succedesse qualcosa di grave ai nostri compagni che sono in mezzo al mare, ovviamente noi blocchiamo tutto e non facciamo transitare nulla verso Israele.
Io lavoro nel porto di Genova da 29 anni. Se provare a fermare questo traffico di morte significa dover fermare ogni tipo di traffico verso Israele, da e per Israele, benissimo, allora noi fermeremo tutto. Veramente non partirà più un chiodo verso Israele, perché se la loro logica è affamare le persone, la nostra logica è quella di non commerciare più con Israele.
Soprattutto devono lasciargli lo spazio per poter entrare a Gaza a portare questi aiuti umanitari, anche solo per sfamare bambini, aiutare medicinali, cibo, devono lasciarli passare.
Nello specifico, questo sciopero che stiamo facendo oggi in 75 oltre piazze italiane creerà un disagio alle merci che dovranno andare in Israele. Intanto.
So hang on, let me just chime in here for a second. because I think this is really important that we make this abundantly clear here. This is how you do it. You stop it you stop the arteries. That's what you do. You stop the arteries in order to make sure that the people are still going to survive. These arteries that carry death and destruction. They said not one nail gets to Israel. Nothing. You get nothing. And so we can pressure our governments to do and keep doing that. Fine. Go ahead. Keep doing that. But here's the question. What are we doing ourselves? Are you a dock worker? Are you a truck worker? And I'm not saying to put total risk on your job, but I'm saying you might have to risk something in order to help people for liberation. Because ultimately, it's the right thing to do. Solidarity should not be a tit for tat. Solidarity should not be an even exchange. It should be because it's just the right thing to do. And so what the Italians here that we see are demonstrating is really a lot of the same fervor that people like Ansar Allah are demonstrating. With groups like Ansar Allah and Hezbollah and many other different groups that are fighting against the Zionist occupation, they're going far and beyond what the Italians are doing by, yes, but at least the Italians are starting something and going outside the bounds of their government and saying, you know what? If you guys won't do it, we will. So no ships. Oh, I'm supposed to be on a ship that actually transports goods to Israel? I'm sorry. I'm so sick. I just can't do it. And the thing is that there seems to be a social contract or agreement between all the people and going, I won't cross this picket line. Neither will you cross this picket line. Because there are fellow workers in Gaza. And remember, Italy is in the Mediterranean. So Gaza is literally, southeast of them, just, a few hundred miles. So they're very close. Remember, the Empire of Rome ruled over that area about 2,000 years ago. So it goes without saying that when it comes to pushing for something like this, not just for them, but what about learning from this and also applying it to our own situations too? One thing I learned, and it's really, really good. There's a book by called Perfect Victims by Mohammed El-Kurd. And one of the things he talks about is when you also do what you can to stop the empire from where you are, not only are you liberating yourself, but you're also helping them to liberate others across the globe. So yes, fighting for, protection of the water, like the water protectors do here. Fighting against a capitalist system that exploits workers day in and day out. And our goal is to really have a worker-centered government. These things also lead to the liberation of different groups around the world. All roads lead to liberation of groups in Palestine, Congo, Sudan, Haiti, where have you? And so that's the point, right? Let's continue on.
In questo momento i porti sono fermi, quindi non c'è movimento di navi.
The dock workers in Genoa called a general strike in May, as well as teachers and public transit workers in cities across Italy walked off the job today.
La classe operaia negli ultimi decenni ha un po' lasciato perdere la coesione che aveva tra i lavoratori. Il fatto di essere qua oggi in tanti e così tanti posti di lavoro che sono stati fermati è un segnale anche per dire che la classe operaia si sta rimettendo insieme. Quindi se oggi stiamo lottando per la Palestina, questa unità di persone vuol portare ad essere anche una lotta per un futuro lavorativo migliore per tutti quanti.
2 o 3 non cambiamo il mondo, in tanti riusciamo a cambiare.
Il Portuale
ce l'ha insegnato,
So that is what's going on the ground. And I just got to give, my props to the Italian people for doing this general strike, because ultimately we can do the same thing here. But it also takes being able to, and this is why we talk about mutual aid a lot, because a lot of times people say, well, we can start a general strike, but how are we going to be able to go through it? And the thing is this is why mutual aid is so important, and growing those mutual aid apparatuses. So when things like this do come up, you're taken care of. And so you're training yourself for when that day does happen. So then you have solidarity with your neighbors. So then you get to know your neighbors. And then when things go down, you have people in your immediate circle to turn to, while standing in solidarity with people who are around the world who are being subject to a Holocaust. The Native Americans in this country know exactly what that feels like. They know what a Holocaust feels like. Black Americans know exactly what a Holocaust feels like, because we have been subject to it, especially during Jim Crow. You can say that was a Holocaust. Or if you don't want to use that word, you can say genocide. But it has happened. And so it is very apparent that and I'm not saying that it's not still ongoing, it's that the intensity of it is not as severe at the moment as what's going on in Palestine. And yes, we were the first. We were some of the first that have went through this. And guess what? It can come back in that same intensity as well. This is why it is important for us to fight against these systems, because it's not just fighting for Palestine, it's also fighting for everybody else, including yourself. Because we do not want what's going on in Palestine to come back home. That means we have to stop it in its tracks anywhere it is on this planet. And so therefore, this is why it's so important for us to come together in solidarity with other people. And yes, we can say, well, what have they done for us as a groups collectively and things like that? We can go tit for tat on that. But ultimately, it's just the right thing to do, because, I mean, if somebody's in a car accident, do we stop to question, what has that person done for me? Or do we stop and then we save the person while we can? We can deal with the other stuff later, right? But they're literally going through a Holocaust. Let's let our priorities be properly focused where it should be. And so this is one of the reasons why Israel is doing what it can to take over as much of our communications apparatuses as they can. Right now, there's a Zionist that's running TikTok now. They're taking over many different industries as we speak. And so then when we speak out against them, then what happens? They are able to silence us for the sole reason of speaking out against a supremacist state. So shout out to the people who were in Italy let's go over just a little bit of the details of this. So here we have Italy's unions lead general strike for Gaza. It says Meloni should take a stand with the facts against those who have slaughtered 20,000 children rather than limiting herself to say, I do not agree, said one critic of Italy's far-right prime minister. So let's get into this. It says the strike is called in response to the ongoing genocide in Gaza Strip, the blockade of humanitarian aid by the Israeli army, and the threats directed against the global Samud flotilla, which was on board Italian workers and trade unionists committed to bringing food and basic necessities to the Palestinian people. So remember when it was reported, and I also reported on here, about the global Samud flotilla that was attacked off the coast of Tunisia. And so when that happened, there was a drone that they said there was a drone that attacked the ship. And so they recovered and they continued on their way. And so this leads a spark because people say, well, wait, they're attacking our fellow workers out there. Oh, no, we're not going to stand for that. Just like how they went against Christian Smalls. And so the crazy part is they did that with Italians on board, and Italians, they're like, you know what? Let's go ape shit on these guys, right? What did we as Americans do when Christian Smalls got beat by the IOF? Did we take to the streets? And so I think it's important that we also need to have more solidarity with our fellow Americans who are doing noble acts like these too. Because if Israel is willing to do what they did to Christian Smalls, that means they're willing to do it to any one of us as well. Let's continue on. It says in Rome, tens of thousands of Palestine defenders rallied at the Termini rail station, Italy's largest, with many of the demonstrators occupying the building. While protest activities snarled traffic in some parts of the Italian capital, many Roman motorists showed solidarity with the demonstrators by honking their horns and raising their fists into the air. So let's take a look at this. This is from Dropsite News. It says pro-Gaza protesters who blocked a highway near Rome were met with visible solidarity from drivers. Regional news coverage of the paralyzed central station showed only people expressing support for the protests. Let's take a look at this. Wait, did it actually? Okay. Let's see. I just want to take a look at that there. You know what's funny about all this? You know, not funny. That's the wrong word. You know what's peculiar about all this? I see an Italian attacking other Italians and pushing them out the street and telling them to get a job and go home and, you know, shut up and don't do this here, and this is not the right way to do it. I don't see that. Right? I see that here in this country, but I don't see that over there. This country's so divided. And the crazy part is, Italy literally has a right-wing leader of their country. And yet, you know, the Italian people are showing solidarity, right? And then the people who are driving, they're cheering on the protesters. And I don't see Italian police beating people unless that's something that they're not showing. But please let me know if you saw it.
Prendiamo il treno molto raramente, però ci teniamo a precisare che condividiamo tutti, siamo in 9, le ragioni dello sciopero.
Okay, so I don't understand Italian, but I think what she was saying was positive. But that's part and parcel of what's been going on in this part of Italy. Let's continue on. It says Milan saw an estimated 50,000 people turn out to locations, including the central rail station, where some protesters damaged property and clashed with police, who said 10 people were arrested and 60 officers were injured. If we don't block what Israel's doing, if we don't block trade, the distribution of weapons and everything else with Israel, we will ever achieve anything. So you have literal like union leaders coming out for it. Look at all those people. It's hundreds of thousands of people. And Bologna, home to the world's oldest continuously operating university, students occupied lecture halls and thousands of demonstrators took to the streets, including the tangenziale, the ring highway around the city where police attacked them with water cannons and tear gas. Dock workers and other demonstrators marched and blocked ports in cities including Genoa, Trieste, and Livorno. Thousands of protesters also blocked the main train station in Naples. So this is why it's so important that we have solidarity with workers across the world, because ultimately when we have solidarity and then we push for real change, not just where we're at, but also in other parts of the world, we're literally not just saving ourselves, but we're saving ourselves. And what do I mean by that? We're saving ourselves in a local aspect, but we're also saving ourselves in an international aspect. Because we all share the same planet. Might as well make sure that everybody's good. Not just in one piece of the planet, the whole planet. So shout out to everybody who are in Italy. You guys are doing the damn thing. If I had some music like Savvy, I would play music right now and drop a beat, but of course, I don't have that. But, oh man, thank you so very much. And please, please keep fighting for liberation for everyone. All right, go ahead and like the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody. All right, we're going to get into some of the chats here. Let me take a look at the Rumble. See, we have any Rumble rants? I think we maybe. Okay, not yet. All right, we are still good to go. I'm going to check on the Kick stream to see if we have any gifted subs. Anybody commenting? Let me see. Nope. All right. Looks like we're good, though. on that end. Let's get to the rest of the chat, guys. All right. All right. So, well, I went way too far up. Roger says Gen X women in their prime in their 20s and in 90s were way more fine than Zoomers who are in their 20s today. Oh, Lord, Roger. Though, yeah, there were some fine-looking women back in the 90s. I'm gay. I'm not blind. Jesus. Anyway, but yeah, there were some fine-looking women back in the 90s. There was fine-looking men back in the 90s too. Some of them still fine. I'm not going to tell you who I have a crush on that's over 50, but they still fine. I'm trying to tell you. And oh, by the way, I'll tell you a woman that is still fine. Like if I played for the other team, I definitely would. Sanaa Lathan. Oh boy. Woo-hoo. She aged like fine. She aged like scotch. Anyway, let's get into the rest of the chat. Roger's probably like, He's probably shaking his head in agreeing with me. Keep your eyes on the road, Roger. Anyway, Jacqueline says, fair play to Italy. Has Italy still got the right-wing government? Not that it makes any difference or it takes away from what they're doing. Yeah, they still have Giorgia Meloni. So, yes. Let me see. Wait, what? Jacqueline says in the UK, Jay-Z and Beyonce have bought a plot of land in the Cotswolds, and the UK government wants to set up an apprenticeship scheme for young offenders so they can build armaments. Oh, a welding apprenticeship. Interesting. Okay. Has the U.S. ever had an all-out general strike? I think we've had, maybe one. They're not that often because the corporate parasites, they're very effective at stopping anything that would garner a strike. Meaning, wrong words. They would stop anything that was an infancy of a general strike. That's basically what I mean to say. Edward says the Italians know how to strike. Plus, they do it peacefully and will not trade with Israel. They are not afraid of their government. Unfortunately, we fear our government. And yes, that is the problem. We shouldn't be afraid of our government, but because they've harmed us so much, they've caused people to fear. But the crazy part is that we shouldn't be, because we literally have the numbers. Kime says JB is in the place and he's got what it takes to rock the mic, right? Thank you so very much, Kime. Let me see. Terry says, yeah, good book on that is U.S. Strikes, A History of American and 10 Strikes by Eric Loomis. Thank you very much. Oh, Eric Loomis. Thank you, Terry. Dr. Woe says, I got the beat, JB. All right. Rashawn says, much love for Italy. Hashtag Free Palestine. Human Rights for All says, hi, Jay. Hello, Human Rights for All. Sila says, yes, in the 1970s. Says, this is why Reagan and Democrats co-signed the Taylor Law afterwards. Interesting. Okay. All right. So before we move on, I just want to give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon. you know we got to do the damn thing because they are the ones who keep this light on, this other light, and that other light, and that other light, all the lights. All right. So here we go. Here are the tiers. Mega Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters, Comrades, Solidarity, and JB members. You better thank a JB member. All right. And the new members, AJ, thank you so very much for becoming a JB member. It means the world to me because guess what? It literally helps me to survive and keep the channel going. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And just to let you guys know, my channel is demonetized. So if you like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. Now, it's interesting. Before I move on, I actually just wanted to ask a question. And if there's anybody who's in the chat who might be one of the comrades in independent media space, I'm actually curious about something that Jim Jordan put up. The reason why I'm curious is because this has to do with me not being monetized anymore. And I'm just going to touch on this really quick because I found it really interesting. And I'm hoping that this changes things. This isn't necessarily part of my stream to talk about, but I do want to just briefly go over it for about 5 minutes. Can I do that? Can I do that? So this is something that I found very interesting as a content creator on YouTube. So this is from Representative Jim Jordan. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm going to preface this by saying that there is a lot I disagree with Jim Jordan on. But a broken clock is right twice a day. I'm going to say that, and then let's get into this. All right. So Jim Jordan says, breaking, due to our oversight efforts, Google commits to offer all creators previously kicked off YouTube due to political speech violations to return to the platform. But that's not all. He said YouTube also admits the Biden administration censorship pressure was unacceptable and wrong. Confirms that the Biden administration wanted Americans censored for speech that did not violate YouTube's policies. Details when YouTube began rolling back its censorship policies on political speech after Judiciary GOP began its investigation. States that the public debate should never come at expense of relying on authorities. Promises to never use third-party fact checkers, and warns that Europe's censorship laws target American companies and threatens American speech. It says over the past few years, we have uncovered massive scandals relating to big tech censorship. So he talks about the Facebook files. Of course, we had the Twitter files. He says during the Biden-Harris years, under White House pressure, YouTube changed its policies to censor political debate on pandemic and election style. I'm still being careful because guess what? They ain't going to catch me slipping. I ain't saying the word, but y'all can read. Today, YouTube admits that the censorship pressure from the Biden administration was unacceptable and wrong. Okay? It says now to make amends to the American people and because of our work, YouTube is rolling back its censorship policies on political speech, including topics such as COVID and elections. Damn, I said the word. I ain't saying it no more. It says, what does this mean? Whether you were established YouTube presence with a massive following like Dan Bongino or just starting out to express political views there, you will have an opportunity to come back onto the platform if you were censored for engaging in political speech. Okay? It says, this is another victory in the fight against censorship. He really needs to talk to Donald Trump about that because Donald Trump doesn't agree. Anywho, I digress. Biden administration pressured Facebook to censor Americans. 2, Facebook censored Americans. And 3, Facebook throttled the Hunter Biden laptop story. Now, I will say this. Just because Biden did censorship doesn't mean that the Republicans don't do censorship either. They do it because look, we're literally what we're doing with Charlie Kirk. So ain't that the chamber pot calling the toilet white? Anyway, he says even as Meta admitted the Biden-Harris censorship was wrong, others in big tech were reluctant to get on record. Now, Google is acknowledging for the first time that it too faced censorship pressure from the Biden White House, and that pressure was unacceptable and wrong. But that's not all. YouTube is making changes to its platform to prevent future censorship. YouTube is committing to the American people that it would never use outside so-called fact checkers to censor speech. No more telling Americans what to believe and not believe. YouTube is also trying out community notes. So it talks about Meta follows suit and now YouTube. It says YouTube confirms that Europe is targeting American speech and innovation. Here it admits European social media laws place a disproportionate regulatory burden on American companies. YouTube warns that Europe could force companies to remove lawful social media content and could risk freedom of expression within and outside the EU. That's right. Europe wants to censor your online speech, even you aren't in Europe. But here's the thing. Europe has their own laws. This is the part where I'm kind of like iffy about, because Europe has its own laws. And so therefore, if you say something that Europe doesn't, that the European Constitution and the people who are voters, that they don't allow, that they've chosen democratically, then that's them. That we should not have our speech forced upon them. Now, if we get a content violation, it should be a violation depending on where we live here in the United States, not a violation from them. Therefore, that means that if what we say violates their laws, then therefore, okay, well, you can block our video from being shown there. That's fine because that's your laws. But we shouldn't get a content violation because we say something that's perfectly legal and within the framework of our laws here, but it's not over there. And the same thing vice versa. If something is said over there that is against the framework of our laws, which it really wouldn't be, to be honest with you, for the most part, because we're supposed to have freedom of speech here. So they should be able to say, the things that even they can't say over there, they could say over here. Anyways, that being said, there's a lot of overlapping agreement between myself and Jim Jordan, which is crazy. All right. And look, I get it. Like, he's full on far right winger. I'm a communist, but here's the issue. It's like, I'm not a partisan. So therefore, if he says something that I agree with that is correct, then I'm going to say, yeah, he's right. So this talks about holding big tech accountable. It says of all these massive wins for the American people, the First Amendment, let me see, First Amendment and freedom, we won't stop fighting to protect free speech. You need to fight Donald Trump on this, though, because Donald Trump is, he doesn't like when people say stuff about him. So he wants to control speech from the executive branch. But anyways, I asked this question because I was very curious. What about those of us who have been demonetized, but we're still on the platform? That's a question that I have, because I haven't been banned, but I've been demonetized. And of course, people got some stupid stuff to say. And so that's my question. What if we're demonetized? Can we get our monetization back? I would like to, because all I did was report on what was going on. Now, here's the crazy part. Part of me thinks that it won't happen, because I spoke out and showed what Palestinian resistance was doing. And so they may make an exception. Well, we're not going to protect that speech because, Israel. So I have a feeling that they're going to do it for a certain speech that liberals were trying to censor versus, so the conservatives can have free speech for what they like. But then what if I start talking about things that are topics of LGBTQ? What if I start talking about what if there's a drag queen that wanted to do story time and they're in full drag? They're dressed modestly, but they're in drag. It's kind of funny how some people their brains will, kind of go, if they hear drag and modest. Yes, these drag queens can dress modestly. Anyways, but what if they're reading to a bunch of kids and you don't see the kids' faces? They're just sitting crisscross applesauce and you're behind them, but you see the drag queen reading to them. Is that going to get taken down? Are you going to allow that? Because if you say you're for free speech, then okay, cool. But what about people like me who reported on what was going on October 7th? Are you guys going to allow that? Are you guys going to give me back my monetization back? I would hope so. So here's my thing, that, because that's political speech. Or is AIPAC going to hold people like Jim Jordan and go, hey, no, not those guys. What about somebody who's, pro-Palestine? What if somebody wants to upload to YouTube critical race theory lessons? What if somebody wants to do that? And they're perfectly within the bounds of YouTube guidelines and terms of service. Are you going to be okay with that? See what I mean? So my thing is, like, if you talk about you're for free speech, that means you're for free speech for everybody. So put your money where your mouth is. Just a thought. I'm actually curious of what you guys think, because I would love to have my monetization back. That would make things a lot easier for me. But it's a bit of a hairy situation. It's hard out in here in these streets. Anyway, let me see. Zoe says, hey, comrades and government agents. Jacqueline says, does this mean that there might be hope you get remonetized again? I don't know. I'm hoping. It should extend to people who are demonetized. And it's like, why were they demonetized? Were they demonetized for political speech? I was demonetized for political speech. It didn't have to do with the pandemic, but it was still political speech. Fair is fair. Oh, we got Rondo chat saying, peace, 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 fam. Good to see you. Human Rights for All says 100%. It says a broken clock is right twice a day. Edward says, I'm curious of those who commented on Truth Social, Trump's platform, criticizes Trump. Would he censor them? Great question. Great question. You should be able to insult Trump without having any type of reprimand from the government. But then these same people will say, oh, well, they're a private company, so they can do what they want. Right? This is why I think that platforms like YouTube, because of how big it is, it should be now the public square. It should not be a private company. That's just me. Because then if it's a private company, that means it's subject to the whims of, money and advertisers. So anyways, I just wanted to bring that up, guys. And let me know in the comments what you guys think. Now, let's get into the next story. We got this to cover. So, of course, we talked about a general strike in Italy for Gaza against the genocide that's happening there. So now we're going to be getting into talking about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, man, Donald Trump ain't shit. Let's get into this because I got to call it out like I see it. They want to erase this. Let's get into this because this is ridiculous. But you know what? We should expect this from somebody like a Donald Trump. Those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it. But what about those who history is held back from? Well, it goes without saying that the results will be the same. I think that's the goal of somebody like a Donald Trump. Why do I say that? Well, it looks like Donald Trump is looking to censor history. He's at war with history. And so we need to talk about this because you can't sit here and get upset at somebody wanting to take down a Confederate statue, but you don't want to talk about all the things that they have done. You want to keep those statues of Robert E. Lee up and all these Confederate generals and sergeants and soldiers. You want to keep all that up, but yet you don't want to keep up what they were trying to protect, the institutions that they were trying to protect. You don't want to keep that up? Let's get into this because this is why Black Americans, if you voted for either party, you got played. If you voted for Kamala Harris, you got played. If you voted for Donald Trump, you got played. Because you're thinking, oh, well, they will do something better for me. No, neither of them will. And this is why. Let's share the screen. It says National Park to remove photo of enslaved man's scars. The Trump administration is ordering the removal of information on slavery at multiple national parks in an effort to scrub them of corrosive ideology. So this is the photo. A lot of us, especially Black Americans, we know this photo all too well. We have seen this photo, and this is what they have done to our ancestors, and worse. And worse. It says the Trump administration has ordered the removal of signs and exhibits related to slavery at multiple national parks, according to 4 people familiar with the matter, including a historic photograph of a formerly enslaved man showing his scars on his back. The individuals who spoke on a condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak with the media said the removals were in line with President Donald Trump's March executive order directing the Interior Department to eliminate information that reflects a corrosive ideology that disparages historic Americans. Let me stop here for a second. A corrosive ideology that disparages historic Americans. It's not an ideology to show the truth about what they did. If anything's corrosive, it's what they did and how they'll be remembered by. This is why you got, look, you want to know why there weren't people out in these streets marching for Charlie Kirk? You want to know why? Because most of America was like, Charlie who? Number one. Number two, the people who didn't know who he was like, and whatever. Why? Because they didn't care about him. Because he had a what? Corrosive ideology. So therefore, that's what he was lived by. And people focused on what he said that was damaging to the country. So by corrosive ideology, you mean showing what they actually did to Native Americans and Black American freedmen? What they did to chattel slaves? That's corrosive? Well, who initiated that corrosion? It wasn't us. They're the ones that did it. Why are we trying to hide it? Here's the thing about history. History can be gruesome. History can be jarring and upsetting, but it's history. And yet you don't want people to know it because you don't want people to look at what this country has done and judge it by the actions it's done to other people. He wants people to, by people I mean Americans, he wants Americans to think that America's shit don't stink. When in reality, it stinks to high heaven. Let's continue on. It says National Park Service officials are broadly interpreting that directive to apply to information on racism, sexism, slavery, gay rights, or persecution of indigenous people. Following the Trump's order, Interior Department officials issued policies ordering agency employees to report any information, including signage and gift shop items that might be out of compliance. Trump officials also launched an effort asking park visitors to report offending material, but they mostly received criticisms of the administration and praise for the parks. The latest orders include removing information at Harper's Ferry National Historic Park in West Virginia. Two people familiar with the matter said were about abolitionist John Brown, who led a raid seeking to arm slaves for a revolt. Staff have also been told that the information at the president's house site in Philadelphia, where George Washington kept slaves, does not comply with the policy, according to a third individual. Jonathan Zimmerman, University of Pennsylvania professor who studies history of education, said the latest installment in the Trump administration's unprecedented interference with the nation's civic institutions, a campaign which also includes Trump's takeover of the Kennedy Center and attempts to pressure the Smithsonian. Now, just to let you guys, the Smithsonian was also one of the institutions that also has the African American History Museum in Washington, D.C. And in this one, Donald Trump also wants to censor a lot of the history there, too. So that goes without saying that if you erase history or do not study history, you are doomed to repeat it. And this is why it is so important that we have to preserve what has happened and why it happened, to read up on actual history, not just from the perspective of the victors, but also the perspective of the losers, the occupied, the oppressed, because then you get the full picture. And the problem is, you have people in our government that do not want us to have the full picture. I wonder why. Let's continue on. This represents an enormous increase in federal power and control over the things we learn, brought to you by the team that says education should be at state and local. Park Service spokesman Rachel Paulitz said in a statement that all signage is under review. So it says that it says that Harper's Ferry staff flagged more than 30 signs, according to a person familiar with the matter, in documents reviewed by the Post that highlight information potentially in violation of Trump's policy. They include signs referring to racial discrimination and the hostility of white people to people who were formerly enslaved. This is all true stuff. How is that in violation? How is history in violation of a policy? Park Service officials marked the submission as out of compliance, with staff that are expected to cover up parts of signs or remove them. Separately, Park Service officials have ordered the removal of a photograph illustrating violence against slaves known as the Scourge Back at one national park, according to two people familiar with the matter who spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak with the media. They did not identify the park in question for fear of reprisals. The photograph, taken in 1863, shows scars on the back of a man probably named Peter Gordon from wounds inflicted by his masters before he escaped slavery. The photo was circulated widely at the time, and northern audiences were shocked at what the photo showed. The bodies of enslaved people like Peter Gordon revealed to them realities they had never seen with their own eyes before. And in many cases, it altered their political opinions about the need to defeat the Confederacy and preserve the Union. And this is why he wants to erase that history. Because when you learn history, it shifts your political opinion. When you learn accurate history, it shifts your political opinion. Why in the hell do you think so many people are now turning to communism and socialism? Because we're learning the actual history, not some made-up BS that somebody wrote in a book saying 100 million people were killed by communists. When you start to learn the real substance of history, and then you realize that the United States has done atrocious things around the world. Where in the hell do you think that Adolf Hitler got the idea of concentration camps from? And he admitted it. He admitted that he got it from here. So if you have one of the worst Holocausts in history that happened, and it was influenced by this country, what does that tell you? That means that this country was the blueprint. And if we do not know this, and if we do not study this, and if this information is hidden from us, what in the hell do you think is going to happen in the future? This is that important. And please don't get me wrong, because guess what? The Democrats, they led us to this point. They led us to this. This is why I say both parties are trash. You need to throw them into the dustbin of history where they belong. Set it and forget it. Do not give them any credit at all. And people are like, well, the Democrats, they were behind, wanting this education. Yeah, but they aren't doing as much as they can to reverse what actually happened. They keep letting the Republicans get a win. And it's really an allowance of letting them get a win. Are they really opposition? See, here's the thing. Here's how somebody who's trying to cheat you, how they'll make it look like they're not trying to cheat you. they'll give you a win here and there, but then overall you still lose. That's the Democrats. Let's continue on. It says the photo has since become famous, taking a greater meaning in the struggle for Black liberation. The New Yorker integrated the image into a collage on its cover commemorating George Floyd a month after his death at the hands of police. Later that year, Viola Davis appeared on the cover of Vanity Fair, showing her back with the photographer Dario Calmis, acknowledging that he sought to replicate the historic photo. In his executive order, Trump singled out the corrosive ideology at Philadelphia's Independence National Historical Park, where the founders signed the Declaration of Independence. The park includes the president's house site, where George Washington served as president before the capital moved to Washington, D.C. The house was demolished in the 1800s, but an exhibit opened there in 2010 based on archaeological excavations. Local advocates who had pushed for the exhibit to provide an in-depth information on the lives of 9 people who were enslaved by George Washington while he lived in the house as president. The exhibit includes their names carved into a granite wall. Now, Ed Stierelli said this is not just a handful of signs that tell the story of slavery. Said this is a place that tells the complete story, not just of slavery in America, but what it was like for those who were enslaved by George Washington. Trying to extricate slavery from the president's house exhibit would fundamentally change the nature of the site. So this is just one of many exhibits at Independence National Historical Park, and to me, it's a vital one. And people are going, JB, what does this have to do with working class issues? I'll tell you. Why were Africans from the west coast of Africa, why were they subject to being chattel and brought here, stolen, kidnapped, and brought here in order to do forced labor for the rest of their lives? Their children, their children's children, their children's children's children, and so on and so forth. Why were they brought here in the first place? Free labor. It wasn't because they hated them. It's because they wanted free labor. The hate came during and after slavery because they also needed a way to distinguish who was to be free and who was to be enslaved. And so they settled on skin color. Well, all these people we got from this area, well, their skin is this dark. So therefore, guess what? Then you have the introduction of race, which is a colonial and social construct. So the people who were who were determined to be free workers that you can abuse had extra melanin in their skin. That's how you can tell who was who. Because it's kind of hard to tell when, especially if like they're Irish. I mean, you may be able to tell, but some people, they may pass for Welsh, English, what have you. But this way, there's no mistaking. And so that's exactly how it happened. And so this is why it's so important to fight against these things, because ultimately, the Trump administration is literally trying to erase history, and Black Americans who think that, oh, we can work with Trump or we can pressure Trump, you're sadly mistaken, because even if you try, it's not going to work. It's going to work as well as it did for trying to pressure Joe Biden. And look how that's turned out. And so This is why it is so important for us to focus on this story. Let me share this as well, because this isn't his first go around at wanting to shift history so that it reflects a different America that honestly never existed. The Trump administration orders review of African American museum exhibits sparked pushback. So this was a few weeks ago. So it says President Trump and the White House announced past week that African American exhibits at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History and other museums nationwide will undergo internal reviews. The administration said the reviews were intended to ensure exhibits present the president described as fair, not woke view of America. Trump also posted on Truth social media criticizing current exhibits, saying they focus too much on how horrible our country is instead of its achievements. Here's the problem. I hate to break it to you, but this country was horrible. It is horrible to a lot of people. That's just the way it is. And you know what's funny? The people who say, oh, our country's not horrible are the people who benefit the most from it, who benefit the most from white supremacy, who benefit the most from exploitation, who benefit the most from all these things. You want to talk about, look, let's talk about history. Let's talk about the battle on Blair Mountain. You don't want to focus on anything woke? All right, fine. We won't focus on anything woke. Let's talk about the coal miners. All the white coal miners who were murdered by the parasite class for daring to actually want better working conditions. And they were all white. Oh, you don't want to go woke? Fine. Fine. Let's talk about how many white people that this country also basically screwed over in order to favor the parasite class. This country has been bad for basically everybody except for the wealthy. This is a country for wealthy people, and that's it. Everybody else is subject to be a servant. And that's what way it is. People are like, oh my God, you hate America. I hate what America does. I hate what it does. And there's nothing wrong. Look, do I love everybody? Absolutely. But just because I love everybody doesn't mean I have to like what they do. And guess what? America was never great. It can be. But it never was great for the most part marginalized people because it subjected people to these things. And people go, well, slavery was a long time ago. Baby, no, it was not, because I know some people whose grandparents were still slaves. Number one. Number two, the effects of chattel slavery and Jim Crow and redlining and black codes and medical experimentation and mass incarceration still exists to this day. So guess what? It never went away. So when you tell me, get over it, I want you to do the same thing to Jewish people. Oh, you can't do that? Then don't do it to us. Don't do it to us. Because guess what? Repair has not been made yet. It has not. You can go and say, oh, well, it's over now because it's been so long. No, it hasn't. Me, my brothers, and my cousins are the first people in our family, the first ones in our family that have been born with full rights in this country. Meaning my mom, my uncles, my aunties, my grandparents, they were not born with full rights. They were all born before 1964 and 1965. And they're still, and most of them are still alive. So it's not that long ago. You just do not give a damn about black people. And you're trying to make excuses to not repair because you want to take part in stealing, but then don't want to give it back, and you get mad when we demand justice. And this justice that we demand is also a working class issue. This is why some people get their tighty whities in a bunch whenever the word reparations comes around, because they're afraid that we're going to do to them what they did to us. And all we're asking for is just some repair. Complete, total repair. That's it. Not revenge, repair. We don't want peace, we want liberation. We want peace, not in the absence of tension, but peace by means of justice. I paraphrase, but that was from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so if Donald Trump really wants to help make this country great, he would need to focus on repair. But he's not interested in that. Because a lot of the rest of his buddies, he's also a parasite. And parasites don't give a damn about their host. They just take as much as they can and then move on to the next one. So if you're Black, particularly Black American, just recognize that neither party gives a damn. And this is why solidarity among your fellow workers needs to take precedent over party loyalty for the people who don't have solidarity with you. Those people who are in both parties, they look at you with disdain. They don't like you. And they would never do anything for you, no matter what you do. So it's best to leave them behind and let's start working to rebuild an entirely new system without them or their trifling ass. Go ahead and like the stream. Thank you very much. Let's check on the Rumble side to see if we have any Rumble rants. Oop. We are doing good on time. JB, keep it up, man. Keep it up. All right, we're good here. All right, so, and then let me check to see if we have any gifted subs. Mm-hmm. All right. Looks like we're good here. All right, and let's check the general chat. All right. Interesting. Zoe says the internet is a public utility. It all should not be owned. I agree. Human Rights for All says this give me as much right as a greedy corporation. Jacqueline says, I bet money that the students who go to the more expensive and prestigious private schools will learn all about this. You'd be surprised. Sometimes people like to hold back even among them. Jacqueline says, does Trump not realize these photos can be put back as soon as his presidency is over, provided, of course, that the next president repeals this rule? True, but a lot of times the new president will adopt what the former president did and they won't reverse things. And the thing is, like, it's always that they don't necessarily reverse things going back to the left. It's always when things go to the right, they stay there, but if things go to the left, they revert back to the right. Edward says, when Trump tries to ban black studies, he makes himself more suspect as a bona fide racist. I mean, can we remember the Central Park Five? I know a lot of people from New York remember. Good to see you, Bryce Smith. All right. That's a good question. Is he going to ban images like this from the internet as well? The problem is that we all have phones and we all have internet access, so we can actually look this stuff up. Good point, Zoe. Good point. Says, mind you, all national parks are stolen indigenous land. Ooh, you got a point there. Ooh. Rondo says it's a matter of public record. These MFers, sorry, I'm trying to be good, so that I don't. Anyway, it says they just can't deal with it. Yeah. Falcon Eye says, not sure if I'm turning towards communism and socialism, but I do agree with many of the arguments that defines it. Yeah. It's a process. Let me see. Sela says, if those who hold United States supremacist capitalist-oriented history high are not only miseducated, but beyond inhumane to 90% of the population. Mm-hmm. Human Rights for All says, hide ethnic cleansing, genocide in plain sight. So it says, Dems don't want the working class angry either. Why do you think they give false promises every election? Great point. Black Ronin says there are two goals behind Tang. Tang Hitler. He does look like somebody just took a canister of Tang and just went, oops, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, look at that. You got all orange. He says, and Ron DeSantis, who are trying to whitewash the history of slavery. One, to end all talk about reparations, and two, to manufacture consent to have it brought back. Yep. Because if people don't know, then people aren't going to want to reparations for it. But this is why it's so important for us to keep talking about it. Human Rights for All says in 1865, a double punch bowl, over 20,000 free female and children were buried alive in an old prison, brick up, and allowed to starve to death. Natchez, Miss USA. All right. Golden Monarch says, prison, whether digital or physical, both are awful. Sean says, another could be that they don't want white people feeling guilty. I say they just don't want to face history. I'm going to say something. I said it before, but people are going to get mad at me. It is what it is, but people are going to have to sit with the uncomfortability about it. If somebody who is white, particularly in America, is getting upset about us teaching the reality of what was done to us in history, and then they say something to the effect of, I don't want so-and-so pertaining to their kids or what have you to feel guilty. Here's the thing. Guilt is a very powerful emotion. What does guilt do? Guilt pushes you towards remorse, pushes you towards an emotion where you don't want to ever feel that feeling again. So you do what you can to make sure that what has happened before doesn't happen again. But you have to know what happened in order to feel the guilt so that you don't ever have to do it again. And the people who typically feel guilt are the people who have bigoted thoughts, and they are hearing all the stuff that maybe their ancestors did, or if not their ancestors, they're hearing about the system that they benefit from that we, people like myself, don't. And so they feel bad, and they don't want to feel bad. And so instead of correcting it and then getting rid of the system, they just don't want people to know about it, so that they have to stop hearing about it. If I take a pan that's on fire, like let's say I was cooking something and the pan lit on fire, if I take the pan and put it in the closet and shut the door, I can't see the fire anymore, so I can't feel guilty. But I'm going to tell you right now, that fire will grow. And then the closet catches fire. The door burns down. And then the walls start burning. And then everything starts to burn. Then the house burns down. Guess what? You didn't fix the fire. You didn't put the fire out. So therefore, guess what happens? Now you're out of a house. You're out of a home. Because you failed to repair what was broken. And you put it behind a door saying, I don't see it. It's not there, but it's still there. And that's the problem. That guilt is a reminder that you close that door and that fire's still burning behind the door. The only way to stop it is to open the door, get the fire extinguisher, and put the fire out. But you don't want to do it because you don't want to be reminded of the fire that's behind the door. Because of my feelings. My liberation matters more than your feelings. I'm going to say it again. My liberation matters more than your feelings. So fuck your feelings. I don't care. You feel bad? Good. That means you don't do it again. That means you won't continue to keep a system around that continues to oppress people that look like me. And the crazy part is the people who usually feel guilty are the people that are adults. They're the adults who have these bigoted thoughts. And they're like, oh my God, I don't want my kids to feel guilty. If you start feeling guilty, they're upset, they're angry, yes. Do they have a less respect for their ancestors? Probably. But they're not going to repeat the sins of the past once they know it. Once it hits them right here. The problem is you don't want their hearts to be affected in a way that causes liberation for other people, because if they are liberated, that means that you are equal to them. That means you're not better than them. Well, whoopity freaking do. You realize that you're all of God's children, not just you're some special person. But that's the crazy part. It's like, if you feel guilty, sit with it. Sit with it. Why do you feel guilty? Why? Because you haven't done enough to end this system of exploitation and white supremacy. You're still benefiting from it while not doing anything to combat it. Well, hit dog will holler. Fix it. Fix yourself. Decolonize your mind. Don't get mad, get glad. This is crazy. People are getting mad and upset that, we talk about the crime that has happened. And it's like, okay, yeah, well, what are you doing to rectify that mistake? Look, if you smack me and my face is red and starting to swell, and then you get mad at me for my face swelling and me just going, oh my God, you hit me. And you don't go into that fridge and that freezer and grab a pack of ice to put it against my face to make the swelling go down? Well, then what are you doing? You didn't even say sorry. And if you say, well, it wasn't me or my ancestors, well, you're still living in a system that allows it. And you still haven't stopped the slapation from happenation. Anyway, did that make sense? I hope so. Roger says, first red light, why are we allowing government to own our history? We need Freedmen community co-op museums. Jewish people have that. Why not us? I mean, that's a good point. Says that a community, we should resist the temptation to not weaponize guilt or base backfire. All right. Let's get into our final story. Am I going to be able to get this within? I might be able to finish within a good amount of time. All right. Let's get going to the final story. All righty then. Now, of course, make sure I do my thing. Ain't no thing but a chicken wing. All right, folks, we're going to get into this. So, of course, we talked about Italy having a general strike for Palestine in Gaza. So that was great. We talked about that. Then Trump wanting to erase history. So, yeah, we touched on that. Trifling ass. Anyways, let's get into this final story for tonight. We're going to be talking about a credit crash. Not credit card, credit crash. In fact, a credit score crash. Oh my goodness. This is going to be, whoo, child. It's going to be intense. It's about to get tough out here in these streets. What's your credit score? Go ahead. You can tell me. Oh my gosh. Ooh. What are you doing to raise it? Oh, you can't rate you. I see. Yeah. Well, food is expensive. Oh, you had to pay your rent with your credit card because they cut your hours. Oh, damn. Oh, snap. And then you got a flat tire, so you had to go to the tire place to get a used tire to get it plugged up. I got you. How much that set you back? $75. Damn. That's crazy. You weren't able to pay your entire credit card bill last month? Oh, man. And you still got student loan debt? How much you owe? Oh, damn. Wow. So sorry to hear that. You know what? You're not alone. A huge chunk of the country is actually going through that. Huge chunk of the country, their credit scores are dropping like rocks. Let's get into this because it is going to be a very intense time coming. And in the next few days, we're going to be talking about this. Credit scores dropped by the most since the Great Recession. Let's get into it.
This morning, new data showing the credit scores are falling at the fastest pace in the U.S. since the Great Recession as Americans struggle to keep up with the rising cost of living. Let's go right to CNN's Matt Egan for this. Doesn't sound good.
Yeah, no, John, it's not. It's more evidence that some Americans, they're hurting because of the high cost of living and because of the return of student loans. So FICO had found that credit scores on average, they increased every single year between 2013 and last year when they dipped. And today, FICO says there's an even bigger drop this year. As you mentioned, the biggest since 2009 during the Great Recession. Credit scores, they're still pretty high, moving in the wrong direction, in part because more and more Americans are falling behind on their bills. FICO says that delinquency rates are at or near the highest level since 2009 on car loans, credit cards, and also on personal loans as well. And Gen Z, they're under even more pressure. FICO says that credit scores for Gen Z down by the most of any age group since 2020. And part of that problem, of course, is student debt, right?
Let's stop here. Let's go over this because I think this is really important. So as far as what's going on with the debt, right? It says delinquency rates at or near the highest since 2009. Auto loans. Right now, what we're experiencing right now is a lot of people, our cities aren't walkable. Our public transportation is trash. And so therefore, how do people get around? Either we use our Chevrolets or we have to get a car. And the problem is that these car loans are expensive. Cars are expensive. Car insurance is expensive. Car maintenance is expensive. Gas is expensive. So just to be able to have a car is, it's tough. And you can have a car that you buy outright, but the odds of you having to do more maintenance on it, more repairs on it, it being an older car, you can get a used one like that, but it's going to be subject more to, volatility in your life when it comes to it, needing repairs and maintenance and things like that. Versus if you get something that's newer or brand new, well, the odds are going to be less. And then on top of that, you also have a warranty. But the problem with that is it comes a car payment. And so car payments are exorbitantly high now. And so a lot of people now are starting to default on car loans. And guess what? People need those cars to be able to get to work, to get their kids to school, to get to and from school. You may have somebody that's in college. And so you have all these different people who need their car because we do not have a public transportation apparatus that fits the needs of the people within the local area. For instance, here in Orlando, Orlando is a city for tourists. It's not a city for residents. And so therefore, our bus system caters towards them, but not to the rest of us. And so you have some places where the transit system is even worse. And so if we look at that, and then we move on to credit cards, a lot of people are now paying for a lot of bills with credit cards. They're having to pay with food because food is becoming more expensive, so they have to pay for that with credit cards. And so they're paying, student loans for credit cards. They're doing all these different things. And guess what? The credit card bills are going to be high. And then you forget the credit card interest rates are high as well. Hell, I think I just got a credit card thing in the mail. They're trying to get me to sign up for a credit card. I'm like, hell no. Keep that over there. Because if you have to borrow something, that means you got to pay it back. And they want interest. And those interest rates get high. I'm talking about somewhere north of 27, 28% APR. So you got that too. And then you also have the payday loans, personal loans, places like Amscot and, check cashing places. People are using that. And so all these different things that people are defaulting on and then making their credit scores lower because they can't pay on these things as on time as they used to. It's not just paying things on time, it's paying them, period. This means that the system is breaking down. And remember what we talked about a few weeks ago, how 300,000 Black women lost jobs, and now the Black community, the population, we are at a double the unemployment rate of white people. Our unemployment rate is 7.5% versus unemployment for white people is like around a little over 3%. So we're experiencing higher unemployment. The cost of living is extreme. It has not kept up with inflation. And inflation really is not inflation in its natural form, which we think it would be. What inflation is really just corporate price gouging. And so that's exactly what's happening in regards to credit cards and loans. And then you talk about personal loans. This can also include people borrowing money from their family and friends more from each other. How many people that you know have borrowed money from different people, and it's hard to pay back too. This is why, like, if I ever have anything extra, I don't expect it to get paid back. I just say, here, it's yours. Don't bother. Because I know that I need that too. So it's getting extreme. And then on top of that, you also have the student loans. So let's continue on. And the people who are bearing the brunt of this the most, Gen Z. So let's continue.
Starting in February, they started to report delinquencies on student loans for the first time since COVID. And FICO has found that a record high 29% of people who have student debt have been reported as delinquent. Only 62% have actually made a recent payment. And look at this, another 9%, they could be reported delinquent soon because they have student debt, but they have not made any recent payments. And it's not just student debt, right? You think about young people also contending with the worst job market for recent college graduates in years. I talked to a 22-year-old from Orlando who told me it took him 14 months and hundreds of job applications before he landed a job that wasn't a scam. But he said he's not making nearly enough money to get by, let alone to chip away at his $35,000 in student debt. So he said his credit scores have taken a drastic hit. And he's not alone. FICO found that almost 2/3, 64% of Gen Z student borrowers, they rely on more debt just to get by. That's people who have student debt. They've got to rely on credit cards and buy now, pay later, and also personal loans just to pay their bills. So, John, I do think this is just more evidence of the K-shaped economy, right? Where a lot of people who have money in the market, they own their home, they're doing okay. Others are not. And it just shows this disconnect where you got Wall Street, there's all this euphoria. Main Street, though, a lot of people, they're struggling.
Just to be clear, when you don't have a good credit score, your credit score drops, everything just spirals. It makes it so much harder.
It makes it even more expensive to borrow.
All right, Matt Egan, thank you very much for that.
So yes, unfortunately, the system of credit in our country means that once you start to do bad, it just starts to get worse and worse, right? And so I didn't get my first credit card until I was in my 30s. And then I found out exactly how bad it is. And so by the time I was, 35, 36? Somewhere around there, I stopped. I was like, nope, no more. And I slowly paid them back. And I said, no more credit cards. Close the account. Don't want no more. And that's the thing. Like, it's really just a debt trap to get you into. Now, I know credit is used for a lot of different things to be able to get things that you need. Unfortunately, even jobs, because some jobs look at your credit score to see how likely you are that you'll, be honest about, in your dealings with work, that be like a bank teller or something like that. If you're dealing with money, they don't want somebody that's tempted to steal. Well, if you pay them enough to take the issue of money off the table, then they won't be tempted to steal. I'll just put it that way. But unfortunately, that's the way our system is built. There's a lot of people now that are suffering because cost of living has made it so that they cannot survive on just their income alone. They need to borrow over and over. So let's continue here in this article. Says, although credit scores remain significantly higher than during the Great Recession, they're down for the second year in a row. FICO found a growing share of borrowers are falling behind on car loans, credit cards, and personal loans. So it says average credit scores fell sharply after 2008 financial crisis as unemployment skyrocketed and millions of Americans could not make their mortgage payments and defaulted on auto loans. Credit scores increased year after year for 2013 to 2024 when they dropped by a single point, according to FICO. But FICO found that delinquency rates on auto loans, credit cards, and personal loans are at or near their highest level since 2009. These delinquency rates are more consistent with an economy in recession than one still in expansion. Adding that mortgage and home equity loan delinquency rates are still near historic lows. FICO found that 14% of Gen Zers have had large credit score decline of 50 points or more in the past year, more than any other year and double the decline of 2021. But one thing also needs to be made abundantly clear, right? Because Gen Z, they do not and will not at this rate own their home in greater numbers as, say, boomers, Gen Xers, or millennials. Many of us millennials, we don't even own our own homes. I know I don't. So that means that generational wealth that would be there as a cushion, it's not there. So Gen Z is going to be even worse off than millennials. And this is dangerous because now you have a breeding ground for social unrest that is bubbling forth to the surface. And so if people start marching out in the streets because they're hungry, guess what? You know, they're coming for you. And so they're getting desperate. And it's absolutely necessary that we, try to do what we can to stave off this issue. But of course, the only way you can stave off this issue is by changing the system. It says student debt hobbles Gen Z. At least some of the pressure on younger Americans is linked to student debt. Following a COVID era pause, student loan delinquencies were not reported on credit files until February. The Department of Education restarted collecting federal student loans and default in May. This shift disproportionately impacts Gen Zers because about 1 in 3, 34% of them have open student loans, double the national at large, according to FICO. Between February and April, 6.1 million consumers had student loan delinquency added to their credit file. According to FICO, this means that the student loan delinquency rate has climbed to a record high of 29% among 21 million borrowers with a student debt payment due. Another 1.9 million consumers haven't had a delinquency reported, even though they have student loan debt payments due and haven't made payments. 6.1 million consumers had student loan delinquency added to their credit file. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of money. Says younger drastic hit to credit score. Another problem. Younger Americans are also contending with the most difficult job market in years for new college graduates. So he referred to a gentleman here in Orlando that took 14 months to find a job. And they talked about how their credit took a drastic drop. Now, here, it says taking on a second job, says Sue Murphy, a nurse in Philadelphia, took a Parent Plus loan to help fund her daughter's college education. The $70,000 in student debt requires monthly payments of just over $500. To make ends meet, Murphy took on a second job, making her schedule 12 days on and 1 day off. Feels like it doesn't pay to be an honest, hardworking citizen in this country anymore. I'm going to highlight this. It almost feels like it doesn't pay to be an honest, hardworking citizen in this country anymore. Remember what I said about the link between poverty and crime? There it is. And people will scoff and go, oh, well, they just need to work harder. They just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Well, guess what? Here's somebody pulling themselves up by the bootstraps, and it ain't enough. Sounds like this person is about 2 seconds away from, instead of pulling herself up by the bootstraps, she's looking like she's going to be pulling a mask over her face and going, hey, this is a stick up at a bank. I recommend anybody. Have you guys ever seen the movie Fun with Dick and Jane? Go ahead and watch it. It's hilarious, but at the same time, it speaks to the issues of poverty within our country. It's with Jim Carrey and Tia Leone. It's a very funny movie. It's hilarious. I love that movie. But it just goes to show how this system is not built for working people. And the problem is that you cannot financial literacy your way out of this. It is unsustainable. I want to share this as well, because this was a study that was done at the DOJ. And I think it is very important that we show that as this continues, dangerous times are ahead, especially when in regards to our financial situation in combination with crime and poverty. So this is out of the DOJ. It says household poverty and non-fatal violent victimization from 2008 to 2012. So it says for the period of 2008 to 2012, persons living in poor households at or below the federal poverty level, the FPL, 39.8% per 1,000. 39.8 per 1,000. Had more than double the rate of violent victimization as persons in high-income households, which was 16.9 per 1,000. The percentage of persons reporting violence to police was also higher among households at or below the FPL, the federal poverty line. More than half of victims of violence from poor households, 51%, reported the victimization to police, compared to 45% of victims from high-income households. This report uses data from the National Crime Victimization Survey to describe the nature of non-fatal violence against persons aged 12 or older living in households defined by their percentage above, at, or below the federal poverty line, as measured by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The report shows how race and Hispanic origin, location of residence, and poverty are related to violent victimization and the reporting of violent victimization to police. Throughout the report, the terms at or below the federal poverty line, poor, low income, middle income, and high income are used to describe household poverty levels. At or below the federal poverty line or poor refers to people in households at 0 or 100% of the federal poverty line. Low income refers to persons in households at 101 to 200% of the federal poverty line. So I will actually fall in that. Middle income refers to persons in households at 201 to 400% of the federal poverty line. High income earners refers to persons in households at 401% or higher than the federal poverty line. Federal poverty line is generally considered a more robust measure of economic status than income alone because it takes into account the size of the household. The trend estimates presented in this report are based on a 2-year rolling averages centered on the most recent year. For example, estimates reported for 2010 represent the average estimates for 2009 and 2010. Other tables focus on the 5-year aggregate period from 2008 to 2012, referred to throughout the peer report as 2012. Both approaches using rolling averages and aggregating multiple years of data increase the reliability and stability of estimates and facilitate comparisons of detailed victimization characteristics. So let's take a look at rate of victimization by poverty level. You guys look at figure 2 here. So take a look at the poor. The poor is the dark blue line, right? So this is why I say that it is about to get more dangerous, because the poorer people are, the more volatile they become. And so now, people who say, oh my God, we have such a crime problem, crime is closely linked to poverty. So if you keep the poverty high, what is going to happen? Then the crime is going to go up at a commensurate rate. And it's not just people being upset that they're poor, it's people turning to maybe substances in order to be able to cope with being poor. And those substances, like alcohol, could also make someone violent. And so what do they have to turn to? And so seeing this, what's going on in regards to people's credit scores dropping, just shows that it is about to get even worse. I'm going to put the link to that study in the chat for you guys, and also I'll put it in the description. But I think it's important that we note that as this system continues, it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy where you have crime skyrocketing and people go, oh man, I don't get it. Why is crime so high? And yet they don't bother to look at the poverty that's happening within said area. And if you want to lower the poverty, if you want to lower the crime, you lower the poverty. But it's not in an individual basis. You cannot expect individuals to completely change a system through individual actions. It takes collective effort to hamper or to stop a system that thrives on oppression. So this is why it's so important for us to keep an eye on the economic situation of what's going on, because it's showing us of what exactly is to come within our own areas in regards to crime and how people are doing, even mentally, because you can have people who are more mentally volatile because they're stressing out about their finances way more than they have ever before. I want to share something else with you, because a lot of people don't think about this when it comes to housing expenses, but this also is important too. So it says millions face skyrocketing health insurance costs unless Congress extends subsidies. Let's take a look here. It says there's a bipartisan support in Congress for extending tax credits that have made health insurance more affordable for millions of people since the pandemic, but the credits are in danger of expiring as Republicans and Democrats clash over how to do it. Democrats are threatening to vote to shut down the government at the end of the month if Republicans don't extend the subsidies, which were first put in place in 2021 and extended a year later when they control Congress and the White House. The tax credits, which are slated to expire at the end of the year, go to low and middle income people who purchase health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. So this also is another factor, because what apparatus, what medium are people paying for their health care with? They're paying their health insurance with credit cards. So if they're defaulting on those, if you have a medical emergency, and let's say you have to go to either urgent care or to the hospital, if you don't have insurance but you have a credit card, you're going to have to max that thing out. If you do have a health insurance, and guess what? You may have that big expensive copay. A deductible. Let's say you have a $4,000 deductible. Well, guess what? You have to charge that to your credit card. But are you going to have enough money to pay that credit card back? And still pay the premiums and copays from health insurance. So that's a whole nother variable that a lot of people aren't mentioning, is that healthcare is extremely expensive, even just on an individual level. Never mind family. It's wild. And so this system is completely unsustainable. So many people are suffering just for the basic necessities, the basics. Remember when we used to judge people by their credit scores? How responsible they were? You can't do that no more. Because everybody's suffering. And so you can't judge a person by their credit scores. Hell, these days, if you still live at home with your parents, you can't judge people by that either. That doesn't mean that they're somehow not ambitious or they're irresponsible. No, in many ways, it might mean they are more responsible, because they're not trying to spend more money than what they need to. Because guess what? That money, they ain't got much of it, because jobs aren't paying like they should. You know how expensive it is to rent a 2-bedroom apartment? It's extremely expensive. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, the Out of Reach report they do every single year, this is how much it costs in order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Florida. You need to make at least $37.27 an hour in order to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. We're about to hit $14 an hour by the end of this month here in Florida. And the only reason why we're about to hit $14 an hour here in Florida is because of a ballot initiative that we did years ago that actually passed when voters voted for us to get to a $15 an hour minimum wage by 2026. And that will hit in September of next year. But even then, it's still nowhere near enough. We literally have to make $22 an hour more. I'm sorry, not 22. We literally have to make $17 an hour more. No. $22 an hour more, yeah. We literally have to make 22. Look, I'm a product of the Orange County public school system. I do apologize. But anyways, we literally have to make $22 an hour more in order to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. So yeah, of course people can't afford the cost of living. Of course, people can't afford food. When was the last time you went to the store? Have you been to the grocery store? If you haven't, go. Remember when, back in the day, you go out to the grocery store with your mom. Now, for us, we got food stamps. So, on the 3rd of the month, it was on and popping. But then we would go shopping. And that cart would be full of food. Full. And not just food, but my favorite name brand. You got the Minute Maid juice. You got the Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Right? We got all the staples. We got the meat. We got the cheese. We got to go to the deli. We got the ham. We got the cheese. We got the turkey. We got the roast beef. We got everything. We got all. And by the time mama went to the checkout counter, the cashier would be like, oh, $105.16. $105.16 off of a full cart overflowing. You know how much that cart of food will cost today? Somewhere north of $400. And yet our wages have not kept up with that. And so now people are talking about skipping breakfast, skipping meals. We're literally at that stage in capitalism where you now have to skip meals in order to survive. So this is why we talk about doing mutual aid, so that we can survive together and to change the system, because ultimately, baby, this is not it. And social unrest will happen soon. And without people learning what it is and what direction we should go, they're going to be going aimlessly and attacking whoever they can in order to get some semblance of relief. And that will happen, and then more people will suffer. You have to know how to strategically strike your blows. And the problem is, a lot of people don't know what or how to do it. This is why mutual aid is so important. I know Savvy Savs, she just had a mutual aid class a couple weeks back. Those are very important. I encourage you guys to join those. Join mutual aid organizations to learn. A lot of them also help teach you farming. I know Revolutionary Education Action League here in Orlando, they actually have the People's Free Kitchen and their Freedom Farm, where you can go there and learn farming techniques from them. So let's say you have a house, but maybe you have a little backyard or a little front yard, who knows? Or maybe you have an apartment where, they look the other way if you can, put some plants in a couple of 5-gallon buckets and grow some stuff. You can learn that, and then you can save yourself some money by growing some of your own fruits and veggies. Or maybe maybe you're in a rural area and of a ranch, right? Where there's a farmer, that herds cattle or sheep or chickens or pork, whatever. And maybe you can get together with your neighbors. See, this is why it's important to know your neighbors, and go there, and you guys can buy in bulk straight from the farm, straight from the ranch, to get your food from them. You guys can pack it up, put it in the freezer. There's so many different things, but here's the issue: is that 1, you have to get to know your neighbors. 2, networking is involved. So that's the thing. That's how we help try to do mutual aids in order to, save ourselves from this dying empire. But it will die nonetheless, but we just do not want to be dragged down with it. And so part of this dragging that's happening is because you're seeing the results of it from people and their credit scores dropping like rocks. And so my hope for all of us is that we weather the storm and then we get out on the other side into an area where we can not just survive, but we can thrive. All right, so go ahead and like the stream. Thank you very much to everybody for that. I appreciate it from all of you. So yes, let's get into the comments, and let me check the Rumble side, see if we have any Rumble rants. We're good on Rumble right now. People are quiet, but it's good that they're watching. Hello, all you beautiful people on Rumble. Okay, and looks like we're good on the Kick side. All right. All right, so let's get into the chat here. Let me see. Uh-oh, I think I went a little too high. Let's see. Let's go down. Man, that cayenne pepper, that cayenne pepper, that stuff really cleans your sinuses out. Jacqueline says, JB, I think you hit the nail on why they don't teach the full history in Western countries to working class and working poor school children. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Yeah, it's absolutely, it needs to be taught in all of its gruesomeness, right? Because you need to know exactly what's what. Let me see. I can't believe Homeboy said Tang Hitler. That's funny. All right. Human Rights for All says re-education of Puerto Rico colonization and sterilization in 1930s to 1980s. Yeah, they got some crazy stuff they've been doing over there too. Wow, I went way up. Okay. Okay. Falcon Eye says, I heard the higher your debt is, the higher your score goes. Not necessarily. It's about you paying things on time. And if you're able to manage that, then yeah, they'll bump it up higher. Because when you pay everything off, your score actually goes down. Credit scores are very weird. They want you to remain in debt while paying on time. That's the part. Yep, Zoe said, all I know is when I paid my full credit debt in a single month, my score went down. Yep, your credit score goes down when you pay it. Because they want you to be in debt. Jacqueline says, remember that story you told some months ago about the elderly Black woman who had her Social Security benefits stopped because she supposedly owed money for college tuition? I don't really remember. There's so many stories that I've discussed. I would probably have to look for a video. But yeah. Jacqueline says, what happens when people still owing college money reach pension age? Their pensions get garnished. Yeah. They'll even do it for if you owe, and let's say you get a tax return, they'll garnish your tax return. Yeah. Falcon Eye says, yep, the credit system is so outdated. I kind of like China's system. I've never heard of China's system. I need to ask somebody about that. But I have heard of Japan's system. So Japan's system is very easy. When it comes to credit, I'm sorry, not credit. When it comes to, I think, taxes. Oh, you mean, I don't think they have a social credit score thing. I don't know what it is. Like, it's like even renting an apartment, like in places like China, all you have to do is just have the money. There's no credit checks. They just, if you rent, it's just like, do you have the rent money? All right, cool. That's it. Here, you have to pass a credit check. Sean Miller says, on top of that, even the high-priced car parts are being made terribly now. A lot of the effective out of the box. Yeah, of course. Edward says, too many Americans are relying on credit to pay their bill. If you keep paying the minimum balance on your credit card, the interest accumulates. Unfortunately, people shouldn't need credit cards. That's the problem. That's a part of the system. Like, they shouldn't need credit cards. We should be able to get by on just what we make. We shouldn't have to borrow in order to be able to pay for things. Sean says, my spouse be getting credit card offers via mail. He'd be ripping them in half in an instant. Oh, yeah, I throw mine away. Oh, yeah. I get credit card offers, too. I throw them away. Like, no. You're not trapping me again. I got them handcuffs off. You're not cuffing me back up. The only people that can cuff me up are, well, this is a family show, so I'm not going to say it. Sela says both centrists and Dems and Republicans worked together since the 1980s to get better laws for an investment class in this country. Yeah, absolutely. Human Rights for All says, don't forget the medical bills on top of everything else. Yep. And the bill collectors will call, and they will want to charge it too. Edward says, Trump keeps saying that the economy is great. I guess he means for him and other billionaires. Yeah, that's the thing. It's omission, right? That's what he does. It's like, we're going to make America great again. But he never continues, or we're going to make America great again for the richest among us. He doesn't care about everybody. He just cares about certain groups. And those groups are the ones that he belongs to. Travelers Wolf says, Care Bear. It says, will my cheese appreciation degree allow me to pay my loan? Look, if you pay me in cheese, then you're good to go. especially pepper jack. Pepper jack cheese. Oh, yeah, that definitely pays the loan. I love pepper jack cheese. It's the good stuff. Let me see here. Bryce says, or he, she going to that corner. We all know it goes down. Let's see. Make sure I do this. Hey, Mouse, good to see you. It says lurking at work again. Go ahead, do it on the clock. Tell them I sent you. Well, don't tell them, but yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Fire Repo says Sabs always asks how we can listen to shows while we work. I always think any way I possibly can, whenever I can, it's important. Yeah, of course. Do it on company time. Roger says, man, I'm glad I'm done with that dude. That brother was grouchy, McCrouchy attitude like a mofo, complaint all the way there. Hour and a half ride. I only showed him grace because he just got out of surgery. Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. Some people, they can get grouchy, especially post-surgery, especially if they've been in the hospital for a long time. Let's see. All right, so I'll get to this. Okay. And then I can head on out. Let me see. I can't believe I'm actually ending on time. Okay, thank you for this, Roger. He says, 1999, Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act repealed Glass-Steagall Act, which led to the 2008 crash. 1996 Telecommunications Act, 1994 Violent Crime Control and Enforcement Act, 1996 Welfare Reform Act, NAFTA, PNTR with China, Permanent Normal Trade Relations with China, I think it's called, Patriot Act, Authorization of Use of Military Force, which is the AUMF, 2001 Economic Growth and Tax Relief Reconciliation Act, the Aviation and Transportation Security Act, 2000 Commodity Futures and Modernization Act. It says a couple of weekends ago, I chauffeured Larry around as he was doing his annual 62 county tour. I was listening to some of them say how much they hate the government. Amen. But they're obsessed with the national debt. I had to tell them, with Americans holding $21 trillion in mortgage debt, $1.7 trillion in student loan debt, $1.6 trillion in auto loan debt, $1.3 trillion in small business loan debt, and $1.1 trillion in total credit card debt, $220 billion in medical debt held by Americans. Yet you expect Americans to worry about the national debt, which has nothing to do with us. Y'all will never win an election with that thinking. You talk to normies about the national debt, especially if you're running for office, they're going to look at you like you got three heads and ask you, well, what about my debt? If you ain't going to help me with mine, I don't give a damn about the national debt. You can put all the debt ticker clocks down, countdowns all over Times Square as much as you want to. I need mine resolved. Either put paychecks above the cost of living or put the cost of living below paychecks. I told him just like that. Focus on us. Amen. Amen, Roger. Amen. Like, look, I'm going to tell you right now. I don't give a damn about the national debt. I get a damn about my debt. People are like, oh my God, the national debt is this million trillions of dollars. And the national debt really is just how much money is basically in circulation. On top of that, the national debt really is the government actually borrowing from corporations in order to be able to fund the government. Because Professor Richard Wolff goes over all this so succinctly when he talks about what the national debt really is. And then he incorporates MMT as well into it. But ultimately, like it's crazy how we so focus on the national debt. And it's like, okay, if you want to pay down the debt, that means, you know how you pay down the national debt? You raise taxes. On whom? The wealthy. Like, you can easily like bring down the national debt just by raising taxes on the wealthy. Why not do that? Or you could raise the incomes of everybody in order to account for the inflation. You can also build more infrastructure and put people in jobs where they actually make a whole lot more compared to what they do now. And then, of course, they'll still have to pay tax. And guess what? That money will come back to the government and it can lower the national debt. But that really is just money in circulation. Because, I mean, if we took the money out of the Federal Reserve and put it back into the Treasury, where it actually belongs, and we started minting our own coins and money again, and we actually had it backed by something more permanent like gold again, then you wouldn't really have to worry about the national debt as much. And then we can actually have a more stable economy. Also, been doing that, we can also have public banks that actually pay for the infrastructure for things instead of actually relying on the goodness of the hearts of big corporations in order to be able to do this. It's so much. It's so much. Anywho, let's continue on. He says, I remember in the late 90s. He says, I remember in the late 90s having a bad credit score that was almost 800. Reason, because that's when my paycheck was above the cost of living. I haven't checked it in a while, but it's probably around 500 now. But seeing that I have resigned to the fact that I will never own a home, I bought a longer GAF. I don't know what that is. You're finishing on time because I ain't have time to run my Twitter fingers for most of your show. Thank you. The value of our dollar to infrastructure. Tie the value of our dollar to infrastructure. Yeah. All right, Roger. Thank you so very much for that. And we'll do a couple more and then we'll head on out. Yes, Bryce. Thank you so very much. Don't forget to like and share the stream. Thank you very much, Jared, for reposting the stream. Appreciate it very much. People on the Twitter side, and yes, I still call it Twitter. The hell with Elon. Anyway, Sensei says love. Thank you very much, Sensei. And talks about global worker strike. All right, so I'm done. It's time to get out of here. Oh, it's going to be even easier to edit tonight. Oh, thank God. Okay. Guys, thank you so very much for tuning in. It's been a great show today. And it's going to be a busy week for news. I know it. I can feel it in my bones. I'll be talking about some other news stories. I'll be posting clips up. And I don't know what's going on with my YouTube, but the numbers are starting to go up. So it's pretty cool. So if you guys have not, please go ahead and do me a big solid and go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, because that means a lot. It really does help me grow and be able to reach more people to talk about these important topics. So I definitely appreciate it from all of you. Also, guys, just to let you know, I know I don't talk about this that often, but I think that every little bit helps. Of course, I am still raising funds for post-kidney transplant expenses. So if you would like to, you guys can donate as well. I'm also trying to do that. I think I just paid on my from my medications. So yeah, and I do have a bill that is due right now. So if you guys would like to help me out with that, it's deeply appreciated. I will share it in the chat. And if you guys would like to as well, or if that's not the route you guys want to go, you guys can all also go the route of either PayPal, or you guys can become a Patreon subscriber, or if you guys would like to, you guys can also order from my merch store. I also have a merch store where all the designs are mine. So you guys would like to, you guys can do that. Let me share my newest design that I created, which I absolutely love. And this is Bigotry is for Losers. So you guys have that. So yeah, I love it. Bigotry is for Losers. That's one of my shirts that I have that you guys can actually look. It's a 90s synth wave style. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also order that. And I'll put the link for that in the description as well, so you guys can see about ordering it. It's a really nice shirt. So, and it's designed by me. So thank you very much for that. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. And I shall see you guys throughout the week. And RBN is having the roundtable this Thursday because it's the last Thursday of the month. So stay tuned for that. And shout out to Florida Palestine Network as well as Real. I was at the Solidarity Hub for Real on Sunday, so we did mutual aid. And on Saturday, I was at a book club with the Florida Palestine Network. We were reading a book called Perfect Victims by Mohammed El-Kurd. So that was a really great book that I am going to be diving more into. And so here it is. It's called, it's backwards, but it's called Perfect Victims. So it's about, so I'll be talking about that, with my guest next week. So it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. All right, everybody. Take care. Water your plants. Water yourselves. Leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them. Drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, watch something funny, because joy is revolutionary. Read, because reading is fundamental. I love you guys for watching. Take care. And forehead kisses. And have some dinner on me. Well, not on me. Or on, never mind. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you'd like to see any more, you can look here.